I ran into a lot of these things by accident. It was not intentional. After I did my residency in Hopkins, I started operating big surgery, and I noticed that women who were old, who had cancer, I had to make their tissues better. I gave them artificial hormones to make it nice and soft and pliable and beautiful.
Brian Clement here, Hippocrates Wellness. We're on Brainstream. Today I'm with Dr. George Yu, who has a background in both alternative medicine and allopathic medicine. And George and I have known each other since 1985. So George, tell me how you became a doctor and when that was.
It's a good question. I'll tell you the truth. I was a chemistry major. I always thought it was really great until my girlfriend said to me one night, she says, "We can't meet in the lab anymore. I've had it. We have to have a normal life." And I said, okay, let me think about it. And I thought about it and I said, yes, I need to do a more like a pseudoscience, which is basically an art. And I always tell people, medicine is an art. It's not a super science. It's not like physics or chemistry. You have to take in the other parts. So to make a long story short, I ended up in a more people-oriented, meaning it's not as serious or not as so deductive.
Yeah,
calculate. And it gives you the chance to have the human component. And in retrospect, after 40 years of doing surgery, I realized it is an art. It is an art. That's how I ended up.
When we first met, I'll never forget, you told me that you had a revelation or an aha moment back in 1968. You were performing prostate cancer surgeries on men, and you challenged, which I always challenged, the idea that high testosterone created prostate cancer. Explain that to people.
Well, I'll try to make it short. When I was a resident at Hopkins, my second year, 1978, I was assigned to castrate 100 men for prostate cancer. And I didn't really want to do it because I wanted to do big stuff, not the little stuff. And W.W. Scott was the head, and he said, just do it, would you please? So I did it, and I found out that at the end of the year, taking care of 100 men, I realized that they became diabetics. And that was a revelation that was new to me because I was just a low man on the totem pole and thinking, well, that's one thing, has nothing to do with metabolism. And I told Dr. Scott about this. I said, Dr. Scott, I'm seeing these people who are becoming more like diabetics and they're getting the belly, the metabolic syndrome. And he says, yeah, but it's not good for you to publish it now. This will hurt your career. So I published it finally in 2011.
Wow.
So it took me that, because in many trades and professions, you have to go along with the program to build your credibility. Who's going to listen to a second-year resident? And so what happened was I realized that one way isn't the only way. And then, of course, when I left Harvard, Dr. Moore said I could go to Africa to be with famous people like Dennis Burkett, of Burkett's lymphoma. And he taught me one thing. He says, Dr. Irvine says, if you keep using up all our sutures, we're not going to have any sutures left. You got to learn how to do it another way. I said, okay, I'll learn it. And he taught me how to do a colectomy with one suture.
You're kidding.
And that was a revelation. So these experiences made me realize that one way is not the only way, even though it could be the Harvard way or the Hopkins way. It doesn't mean that you know the whole thing. And you have to look at the people involved who are learning different things. And one of them happens to be food. Asian people, they revere food. They talk about food more than anything else. And so I said, there's something to this. And little by little, I became what I call integrated. You know, I knew what to do with the surgery. I knew how to treat medical problems. But now I wanted to see why this 1,000-year-old tradition of using food had some relevance.
Yeah.
That's how I ended up doing this.
Now, you grew up in the United States, but where were you born?
I was born in Shanghai, China. We came from a very capitalistic family, and then we had to leave because the numbers were telling us we had to leave. And so, you know, we travel all over the world. My parents were entrepreneurs, and we started industries in different countries. And I was just a tag along. I had to go where they wanted to go, and I learned the languages. I learned to be street smart. Yeah. That's the one thing I always look for in residents when I interview them. Can they figure things out without all the instruction books?
If you don't, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. You cannot do it.
So being a surgeon for 4 decades, that's a long career, a long time. When you get into do surgery, and this is a question I've wanted to ask a surgeon for my whole life. It's funny, it's come up now. What happens when you open somebody up and something is wildly different than you thought?
Good question. It's my nightmare.
Yeah, I bet you.
So I always teach my residents, even before the surgery, think it, visualize it, just like an athlete. Visualize everything that will go wrong, everything that will go right, and see the whole operation. And guess what? Immediately it becomes much easier because you saw it already. So when you open up a belly and you know it's too different than what you expected, you're not shocked because you already thought it. And that's the key to great athletics. That's the key to great surgery.
Yeah,
is that you already seen it, so it's not so scary.
Shocking.
Because that shock puts a huge damper on your ability to maneuver and think ahead, thinking ahead. Good surgeons think 4 steps ahead from what they're doing.
Yeah, there's nothing, it doesn't get your fight and flight in the middle of the
That's
surgery.
right, that's right.
So one of my good friends, a surgeon, he said to me one time that he could determine the color of an organ quite often depending upon the depth of the disease and disorder because of the free radical damage. Do you see that?
One of the clearest examples is cirrhosis of the liver. Yeah. Depending on how much alcohol they've been intaking, it becomes nodular. So you could touch it, you can feel it. So one of the things I always teach my residents is the scissors is not meant to cut, it's meant to feel. Yeah. So these scissors, what you're doing is you're just going back and forth and you're feeling for organs, seeing if they're scarred or not. Of course, the cirrhosis is very clear because you see nodules. But that's what we do when we're dissecting tissue. We're pushing away tissue, but how soft it is, how malleable means less scarring.
Let me ask you a question that I've never even posed to myself. What is the difference between a fatty liver disease, which is killing a lot of people today, and not only alcoholics, as you know,
absolutely,
and cirrhosis of the liver?
So cirrhosis is the end stage. You know, it's when the liver is so scarred that the circulation can't even get in there. So we call it, uremia. Toxic uremia is where the blood bypasses the liver, and the liver can't take care of it.
You end up with septes, or what?
No, you go nutty. Wow. I mean, it affects the brain.
Ah.
So that's why we believe that colon cleansing is very good, because there's a vein, which I know very well because of doing so much, called the inferior mesenteric vein. It's huge. And that goes right from the rectum and colon into the liver. And that's why the liver can take care of it.
As you know, our founder back in '52, when she reversed stage 4 colon cancer, came up with the concept of using wheatgrass and implanting it up. And it goes up that vein to the liver. So explain why you think that would work and why wheatgrass is so good.
Well, number one, the wheatgrass is a very, very primal fruit and plant. And the thing is, what they do at Hippocrates is get all the fiber out and get the juice so that it would work. Now, I won't go into detail, but I'll tell you one thing. if you ever drank wheatgrass, just maybe 2 ounces, you won't be hungry. You can't eat, okay? Take it from me and try it once. And if you can't stand it, you take a little lemon and use it, okay? Now, why is this so relevant to science? Because in science we know that the inferior mesenteric vein from the colon will be the shortcut to the liver. Yeah. And so we give medications that way. So it's not only that, we can give medications that can go right into the circulation faster than swallowing.
Let's broaden this conversation. Why do you think evolution made that happen?
Oh,
think about that.
Yeah,
Why
that
did that happen?
is a good question. And I ponder over this because as a biological anthropologist, you might say, I always think, why did that structure become that way? Yeah. Well, guess what? The colon's one of the reservoirs of some bad things if you don't digest it. So the liver is your cleanser. It has no discrimination whether it's good or bad. It's going to
inverse. It's the opposite.
It's going to take care of everything. Yeah. 90% of it. So when we give a drug, 90%, if you swallow it, is detoxified completely. It's no use. You're getting 10%.
So that's the average amount of uptake.
Oh, huge metabolism. So I always tell people, sometimes you have to trick the liver and not use the liver and use it as a cream.
That's it. That's why
it goes into the lymphatics and you don't see it for a while.
We have so much to talk about. You're also a renowned expert in bioidentical hormones. So explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's, again, I ran into a lot of these things by accident. It was not intentional. After I did my residency in Hopkins, I started operating big surgery, and I noticed that women who were old, who had cancer, I had to make their tissues better. I gave them artificial hormones to make it nice and soft and pliable and beautiful. And then some of my patients came from California. They didn't want that. Yeah. They wanted the bioidentical. So I said, what's the bioidentical? And they said, yeah, it's what God made for you. And I said, okay, I'll try it. If it works, I'll use it. And it worked. So in a way, it was the California girls who made me famous.
Made you an expert.
Yeah. And you know where I became famous as an exenteration of surgery? Not the surgery, it's the vaginal reconstruction.
Oh, yeah.
Because they wanted that, and they were afraid to tell the surgeons, and when we gave them the right hormones, it became so easy to reconstruct it.
Okay, it relaxed the tissue?
Made it beautiful, made it young.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
so then I realized these hormones are powerful.
Well,
and the biggest one was this. One lady said to me, can I have 3 years of the prescription? I said, why? The surgery's done. And you know what she said? She says, doctor, you don't understand. I could not sleep for 20 years. What you gave me made me sleep. And I'm so grateful. And my husband thinks I'm a nicer person since that time.
Isn't that something?
And it was profound. Here I was working on the pelvis, and it's affecting their brain.
See? Boy, we have a lot more to talk about. We'll be right back.
The focus for today's workout is core stability. So core stability not only includes your abdomen, but your lower back, your pelvis, and your hips. Strengthening your overall core will make you less susceptible to poor posture, lower back pain, and give you a decreased risk of developing a muscle injury.
Hippocrates Wellness, Brainstream. We're here with Dr. George Yu, an integrative physician for 50 years now, working on the front lines of allopathic medicine with the top institutions in the world and the top renowned doctors and researchers, as well as understanding the importance of lifestyle. So we're going to talk about the future of medicine, at least what Dr. Yu would like to see that look like.
Is that a question?
That's
or is
a
that
question.
Oh my, that's a long question. I apologize. But I may not be the best one to answer that. But, you know, I always tell people ahead of time, I'm not the most famous department chairman. I'm not the one who publishes the most. I only publish things that are really worthwhile. But one thing I have is I have a lot of experience. And these 70 years of white hairs in institutional, in academic, in missionary work, and overseas all over the world, I've seen a lot. And, you know, to me, medicine is treating diseases. And the thing that sooner or later you're going to have to address is, why did I end up with this? And it's usually the many years that your loving mother fed you, and then you fed yourself. And it could be all wrong, but it's very convenient. You know, the fast food nation, written by Schlosser, said Eisenhower brought the highway to the United States, and that's when the fast food started.
That's true.
You know, so what I'm saying is that there's pluses and minuses, and what you have to do as a human being is that you want to find ways to be proactive and protect yourself from the end stage place called the hospital, if you can. Now, hospitals are very important for acute medicine, but we're talking about chronic medicine. And so that leads to the whole area of how you can better yourself. I remember Dennis Burkett, the great English surgeon, who was knighted by the Queen at the end, and he says, the problem with our food in rich people's food is we have no more fiber. Yeah. I said, oh my God, because I never saw one colon cancer in Africa. Yeah. Not one. We saw typhoid fever, perforation of the bowel, but never colon cancer or diverticulosis.
You know, it's interesting, they did a study about 10 years ago where they showed that Africans had two forms of healthy bacteria that nobody had. The Italians had the closest because they ate more plant-based, but they only had one of the two, and you and I probably don't have either of the two.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, there's a great study, and I was flabbergasted by them at MIT and Harvard, and they've discovered that there's a Lactobacillus reuteri. Have you ever heard of reuteri? No, because it left us. Yep. Because the food changed, and they didn't have any food left. So what you were saying about cellulose, it's a very close cousin. And when they left, a lot of other things left, including the hormones. And they started experimenting on reuteri, which was coined by the Swedish people as their baby. And it's making a big comeback, and MIT shows that you replenish your endocrine system with it. Can you believe that?
Endocrine system?
Yes.
Wow.
And I called him up and I said, is this for real? He says, well, you know, come on up. Wow. So things like that are very, very important. And you don't realize that evolution is changing.
Let me stop there. The endocrine system are the glands throughout your body that is a major filter system. It creates hormones, etc. It's pretty much primary. It's as important as your heart. Let's put it that way.
In fact, you have more bugs' DNA than your own body. We became a very specialized animal because the bugs helped us. And one of the bugs is the mitochondria.
Oh, yeah, that's the best bug.
Okay. Now, the other bug that's a cousin is from a cyanobacteria called chloroplasts. Yeah. So these two evolved somewhere between 5 million and 2.5 million years. When the chloroplasts started making more oxygen, then the mitochondria took place.
Yeah, I give a 2-hour class on this, how photons create matter and create life. And it's the phytoplasts that do that. And they're in green leafy plants. So what is our primary diet here?
Yeah. They're bacteria that crawled into a plant and became part of the plant.
And they're living and they're out there sucking away at the energy coming from the sun. And
yeah.
Amazing stuff.
So sun, and then oxygen explosion, and then mitochondria went into our cells and became a friend, passed on by the mother, only the mother.
So if you have 3 tips before we go, how do we keep that bacteria at a high state that's going to be functional, helps our immune system, our body, our lymphatic system, our glandular system? And the second thing we want to ask is that mitochondria. How do we keep all of that in good standing?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, and I don't claim to be the the world's renowned person in that, but I know a lot about it, and I see it in practice. The mitochondria is what gave us the energy reserve, you might say, that gave our brain such a big growth. In a way, the big brain is not always good. It's also bad. You think too much.
That's right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that it's a very important, what I call an organelle that came from a bacteria, and it gave us the energy. But you've heard recently by Kirkland all the question of senescent cells. And senescent cells are basically cells that have been around and not functioning anymore in your body.
So they're worn out.
They're worn out, but they're still eating.
That's right.
And so what you want to do is to get rid of that batch, reasonably, because that can become, some people feel it's a cancer cell.
Yes.
They found a way to survive. It's not that cancer cells are bad guys, they just learn to survive in a less oxygenated environment.
And I'm speculating,
Yeah.
but I do believe that this program would help to rid the body of senescent cells. Is that your thought on it too?
This, you mean the Hippocrates?
Hippocrates.
Oh, calorie restriction is what it does.
Exactly.
Calorie restriction, today, the way I look at it, is autophagy. You see, you're getting rid of all the bad cells who are not doing anything, get a fresh batch of employees.
Yes.
Right? So that's what new mitochondria are and everything. And believe it or not, it's something people don't exercise makes new mitochondria, especially cold water exercise.
Yeah.
You see?
You hear that?
So you get the brown fat and you make new mitochondria because there's a need. If you're in a warm, perfect place, they don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
So in a way, you have to be exposed to extreme environments to evolve.
That's right.
And you're evolving every day. Soft food will make your jaw small. You have to have chewy, big chunks and bony things, or else your jaw shrinks. And we see that in one generation.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's been a pleasure to spend time with you. And as Dr. Yu said, spend some time in the cold. One of the favorite places here at the Hippocrates campus is at our cold plunge pool. I go to do cryo 2 times to 3 times a week and have for about a year. And George says the next time he goes on a holiday, it's going to be to the North Pole. Until next time we're together, let your brain stream, but in the right direction, and expand and fill your heart with good thoughts and love. Be well.